Could you imagine a dinosaur smarter than a human? Well, we might be closer than you think. This dinosaur was smarter than a chimpanzee. Hi everyone, welcome back to Dinosaur Planet. Today we're answering the question, was this dinosaur smarter than a chimpanzee? Troodontids are famous for being one of the most intelligent groups of dinosaurs. Some scientists have even estimated they were as smart as modern-day primates. The idea of a Velociraptor-like creature with the brainpower of a primate is pretty intriguing, and there's more where that came from. So let's get into it. Troodontids were small bipedal theropods. They lived during the late Cretaceous period, roughly between 80 and 70 million years ago. Like other theropods, they were mostly carnivorous or omnivorous. However, unlike other theropods, Troodontids had a relatively large brain for their time and body size. These creatures had long snouts, short, deep skulls, relatively long forelimbs, and 3 fingers on each hand. If you've seen Jurassic Park, the movie about dinosaurs, you may remember the Velociraptors. They had many troodontid features, but they weren't technically accurate depictions of a true troodontid because they were based off of another type of theropod called a raptor, but we'll save that for another video. The name Troodon comes from the Greek word trou, meaning to eat, and odon, meaning tooth. Altogether, Troodon means eating tooth, and these guys definitely deserved their name. They were named after the superpowered teeth on the inside of their mouths that were perfect for crushing and shearing through flesh and bone. Most Troodontids weren't huge. They were around 3 meters long and weighed about 500 kilograms. However, they did grow to impressive heights. Some fossils show that they grew to be almost 6 feet tall at the hip. That's as tall as an average male gorilla. And if you're wondering how scientists determine height in dinosaurs, here's a little tidbit. Basically, paleontologists look at the femur, which is the thigh bone, and then compare its length to other femurs of similar species. Then they plug the numbers into an equation that allows them to calculate the animal's approximate height. For example, if a scientist finds a femur that's 1 meter long, they can use that number and the equation to estimate that the dinosaur was roughly 2 meters tall at the hip. Okay, now back to the video. Troodontids lived in what is now Western North America, Southern Canada, and the Northern United States. Their preferred habitat was near water. In fact, all Troodontid species were found near some sort of water source like a river or lake. They would have used these bodies of water not only for food, but also for thermoregulation, or maintaining a constant temperature. You see, one of the advantages of living near water is that you can cool down by wading in the shallows. Paleontologists have estimated that Troodontids spent most of their time searching for food, both plants and animals. Since they were omnivores, they would have been active during the day and slept while it was nighttime. To put it simply, they would have had a daily routine very similar to ours. And just like us, they probably needed a certain amount of sleep every night to stay healthy and function properly. Researchers believe that Troodontids slept while hugging their nests for warmth and protection. Nests are structures made by animals for raising offspring. They can be made of sticks, leaves, mud, clay, or a combination of everything. Now, it's no secret that dinosaurs laid eggs. There isn't a single piece of evidence to suggest otherwise. All dinosaurs went through a period in their lives when they were in egg form. But since there aren't any fossilized dino babies running around, we don't really know what kind of care parents gave their young. Maybe it depended on the species, or maybe the parents of Troodontids were more invested in raising their kids than other dinosaurs. In 2021, researchers in Canada analyzed a fossil of a Troodontid trackway, which is basically the fossilized footprints of a dinosaur. They identified 6 sets of tracks and concluded that the dinosaurs were most likely returning to their nests. The tracks were made during different seasons, which suggests that the trotters continued to come back to their nests throughout the year. They may have done this to lay more eggs or protect the nest from predators. Either way, this fossil showed that Troodontids were more attentive parents than previously thought. And speaking of caring for others, scientists say that Troodontids were one of the first groups of dinosaurs to exhibit complex social behaviors. Social behaviors describe interactions between 2 or more organisms of the same species. Complex social behaviors mean the interactions between the organisms are intricate and not just basic mating rituals. Examples include building a social structure, having parental care, and engaging in cooperative activities such as hunting. The reason why scientists think Troodontids were so social is because of their unique skull structure. As we mentioned earlier, Troodontids had relatively large brains, but they also had a bony collar-like structure around their brain cases. So how do scientists figure out how big the brain case was in Troodontids? Well, they looked at related theropods whose brain cases hadn't been altered by bony collars. They figured out the volume of those brain cases and compared them to the Troodontids' brain case with the collar. Then, they calculated the difference. The results showed that the average brain size of Troodontids was equivalent to about 40% of their body weight. To put this in perspective, the average human brain makes up about 2% of our body weight. Hey, do you like dinosaurs? If you're enjoying this journey into prehistoric minds, don't forget to give us a like. It really helps the channel grow and brings more ancient stories to life. And if you love dinosaurs as much as I do, make sure to subscribe for more. Essentially, it's how we learn and apply what we learned. Troodontids were capable of learning and retaining new information. They probably used this skill to find food, hunt prey, or avoid predators. Researchers also say that Troodontids had excellent memory. One scientist even compared their memory to that of a human. And since humans have one of the best memories in the world, that's really saying something. Plus, Troodontids had excellent spatial awareness. They could recognize familiar places and navigate through mazes, even if they were blindfolded. This is the same test scientists use to diagnose people with dementia. So you can see that Troodontids were pretty sharp. But some might argue that intelligence isn't only measured by a good memory and spatial awareness. Problem-solving skills also play a part. After all, intelligence is all about adapting to your environment. And if you can't adapt, you don't really have that survival instinct. Luckily, Troodontids excelled at problem-solving too. They understood cause and effect. For example, they knew that pulling a branch away from a bush would flush out prey. They could also plan ahead. Scientists observed this behavior in a small group of Troodontids. At first, the dinos wouldn't go near a closed door, even if there was food on the other side. But after some time, they started pushing the door open and going inside. They learned that the door hid food, so they changed their behavior to suit their needs. They even used tools. In one experiment, Troodontids were given sticks that were too tall to reach a tasty treat hanging from the ceiling. At first, none of the dinos tried to get the food. But after some time, one of the dinos picked up a stick and hit the object until it fell. The other Troodontids followed suit and used the stick to obtain their prize. Overall, Troodontids were pretty much the smartest dinosaurs that ever lived. And thanks to their big brains, they were definitely smarter than chimps. They used tools, had excellent memories and problem-solving skills. And yes, they probably even added and subtracted like a boss. Thank you for watching this episode of Dinosaur Planet. What's your favorite thing about Troodontids? Which dinosaur would you like me to talk about in the next videos? Let me know in the comments section below.